Go to YouTube. Go to my teacher webpage. And make sure you can see it. Make sure it's flipped the right way. Mm-hmm. It's over here. It's over here.
I thought you had more subscribers than that. You just make a live stream.
I do have a live stream going right now. So I'm trying to give you the see. Never mind. I just wanted to see if it was flipped. Wait a minute, one person. Let's see.
I didn't know you made a YouTube video yesterday or 2 days ago. It's got 9 views. I can see it.
So I don't know if it's flipped or not, because the way I'm looking at it, the words are flipped. You
gotta refresh it.
They did have one person. Now that person is gone.
There it is. I see it.
You can see it? The live view?
Oh, I was just watching it. I'm in the live.
You on the live? Okay, good. Show them how to get on the live.
Just refresh the screen.
Push refresh.
Yeah, it looks good.
Is the words the correct way on your screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. That's all I need to know. All right, so here we go. Our lesson for today. Our lesson for today. Help her, Kim. Without touching her Chromebook, help her.
Oh, I see it. I see it.
All right, so our standard for today is that you will describe Quebec's independence movement. All right, so you had 2 distinct identities, cultural identities, in Canada. All right, so following the 7 Years' War in 1754 to 1763, the American extent of what is known as the French and Indian War.
Mine's playing.
Can you see it?
It's not backwards. You can see it.
Okay, good. All right. So it was known as the French and Indian War. Britain took control of Eastern Canada from the French. So the French was there first, remember? Press refresh. Okay, well, just look up here. All right, because it's on the screen up here. I just wanted to make sure whoever was home could see it and see it the correct way. Thank you. All right, so Britain, remember when we talked about, remember when we did the Ed Helper the other day? The French actually colonized Canada when? The French actually colonized.
It's got a little delay.
It's okay. Yeah. Just listen. Turn your volume down. I want your volume all the way down.
We can put on our headphones.
Really, you don't even need it on. I just wanted to make sure it was clear. I wanted him to do it to make sure that they could hear and see. All right? You can see it from up here. All right? You got it, Kim? All right, so they had the 7 Years' War that happened. Then you had the Ottoman Empire that took control of the eastern side of Canada and the United States for hundreds of years. So by defeating the Ottoman Empire, Great Britain gained access to valuable beaver pelt, and it was highly sought after in Europe. Remember in our Ed Helper, he talked about what kind of trade?
The transatlantic slave trade.
No, not the transatlantic slave trade, but when they colonized Canada, what trade were they mainly concerned with? You filled in the blank on the Socratic, the answer. The fur trade. That's what they're talking about. All right, so this going back to the beaver fur trade. All right, so they sought this fur because it was a delicacy. It was good. They were making money off of it. So it was important for their economy. Exactly. It was important for them. So at this point, you got the Ottoman Empire controlling all of this green that's here. What continent is this? What continent is this?
Canada.
Wait. Before you answer, I need you to look. Before you answer, I need you to look. Raise your hand and tell me what continent is this? Zoe. Europe. Thank you. What continent is on this side? Asia. What continent is down here? Africa. All right, so the green is the Ottoman Empire.
At first, I thought it was North America because Canada's got all those like little holes and stuff. But
what do you see right here?
But then I took a closer look.
What is this right here? That's
Italy.
That's Italy, the boot country. That lets you know where you are.
And then I saw the UK too. That also wasn't that good.
All right, so now remember, after the French and Indian War, like I said, the Quebec province was subject to the monarch. So at first they were controlled by the French. Then you have the who come in?
King George III.
And where is he from?
Italy.
Great Britain. All right, so he's the monarch. He's the person that's in control. He tells them what to do, even though he's way across the Atlantic Ocean in what is now modern day, what country? What modern day country is Great Britain now? The United Kingdom. So back then he was in England, but now it's known as the UK.
Why is there so many King Georges and King Henrys? I wondered that.
Their family.
Why is it so many other people who pass down their name from their themselves and their child and the next child, and it's the same thing.
So King George
Like it
was to do with the taxes and then Boston.
Right, all this goes back to him, remember? But this is Canada though. All right, so when they Great Britain controlled a lot of different areas, including the United States. That's why we speak English, because they colonized our area. What's your question?
Well, it's like having like really, really blonde hair and having a ponytail for a man. Was that
What?
popular back then?
Yes, it was common.
Yeah.
They wore wigs.
Oh.
All right, that's just what's common. It's a common thing. It's not common now. All right. I mean, if they choose to do it, that's on them. But that was a common thing back then.
Yeah.
All right, so can we stick to the subject?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we stick to the subject at hand?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Let's stay on topic. All right, so King George, he controlled the province of what? What province we're talking about right now in Canada? What province are we talking about right now? Quebec. So he controlled Quebec. All right, so when you have jurisdiction over something, that means you have authority over it. So we live in Lawrence County. So Lawrence County, we have a mayor. We have different people that are over different cities, because we got so many cities inside of Lawrence County, but they have jurisdiction in their area. But King George was way over across the ocean, but he had jurisdiction and control in Canada. But he didn't live there. All right, so the province of Quebec was, they were subject to his complete control of him. So they had to listen to whatever he said, even though he didn't live there. All right, so after years of unrest over the king's unfair rules and regulation, Quebec's citizens decided to set up a referendum against the king.
A special vote.
All right, so They pretty much had a special vote to say, okay, we're really pretty much tired of you. We're tired of you controlling us. We want to have our own country. We want to have our own thing here. You're not here anyway. So they set up a special vote, and the citizens voted for political sovereignty from his rule. Sovereignty means to have self-rule. They wanted to rule over themselves. Did you guys fill in your notes yesterday? Yeah, you better be working on it. Fill in your closed notes. I know we're going through the PowerPoint. We worked on this yesterday, but I wanted to teach it, even though you read it yourself yesterday. That's right. So, let me go back. So, in an effort to appease the citizen, what does appease mean? To make them happy. So, in an effort to make the citizens happy, appease is a better vocabulary word. The king agreed to the Quebec Act of 1774, which stated that the Quebec citizens would not be required as newly francophone citizens to assimilate culturally. So that means
Ain't francophones that French and Canadian too?
it goes back to Quebec. It's still in Quebec. You just making the connections. Yes, that was a bell ringer. Yes, we've seen francophones. Yes, we have. Francophones means French speaking. The people in Quebec speaks what? French. So yes, you're right. Thank you for making that connection. All right, so the Quebec Act of 1774, it was passed by the British Parliament, and it instituted a permanent administration in Canada, replacing the temporary government created at the time of the proclamation in 1764. You with me? All right, it gave the French Canadians complete religious freedom and restored the French from civil law. So the Quebec Act basically granted Canadians freedom to go back to their original form of governance and French culture in the province of Quebec. Now, here's a little trivia question. Was French the very first culture in Quebec?
Yes.
You said no. Some people say yes, you said no, and you're right. What was the original inhabitants of the Quebec? They were Native Americans, but what were they called? They were the indigenous people. You right, keep talking. Huh?
I don't know how to say it.
Mizunos? Inuits?
Inuits. They look like Eskimos. All right, so really, they weren't the original. All right, the original were the original inhabitants there, but remember, the French came over and colonized. We read about that in the Egg Helper, remember? And they came over, remember, they were more men than women, and when they tried to set up the colony, and they had to give women dowry to even come over here. They sent orphan women over here to Canada. I said over here to Canada. All right, so yeah, but they told them they can go back to the French because remember when they colonized it, it was the French people that were there first. All right, so now you got two distinct cultural identities. We're continuing on. So over 200 years later, Eastern Canada, especially Quebec, is composed primarily of French-speaking Roman Catholics, whereas the rest of Canada, they speak what? English. All right, so pretty much they just followed what they wanted to do. They were separatists. They wanted to be their own. Remember that vocabulary word too? They wanted to be independent, absolutely. All right, so although 20% of the population in all of Canada speaks French as its first language, 81% of the people in Quebec have French as their first language. So, you know, in the United States, what's our first language?
English.
English. What's our second language?
Spanish.
Spanish. So So over there in Quebec, their first language is French. So the main writing you're going to see on signs and on paperwork and on legal documents is going to be French and Quebec. But then the second one will be what? English. All right, so let me show you a sign. This is a sign that's in the first language, French. Then they normally have the smaller one in English. All right, so French is their official language of business. Like I said, in the government, with laws, schools, any documentation, they're going to put it in French first. Even advertisement, it has to be in both French and English, but French is going to be, that's right, that primary language. However, the English portion must come after the French part. And the words are most of the time used in smaller letters. All right, so Quebec is unique because its official language is French. Rather than
English,
like the rest of Canada. All right, so then there was a political movement for Quebec to separate from Canada as an independent French-speaking nation. We just talked about it. They wanted to be separatist. This can be traced back to a controversial 1967 speech delivered by the French president. Yes, sir.
Don't they kind of look like Adolf Hitler?
she said stay on topic.
It still got history in it.
I can see the resemblance.
That's what I'm saying.
I can see the resemblance. All right, so you made me forget what I was gonna say about it. But anyway, Charles de Gaulle, and he remarked, "The Live la Quebec Libre," which means "Long live a French Quebec." From there, Quebec's quest for autonomy began in earnest. So autonomy means political independence. So they wanted to be, what does independence mean?
By themselves.
All right, what's another word for independence?
One.
Say it. Free. They want to be free, independent, by themselves, away from, not controlled by any other country. That's what they wanted. Autonomy. That's a vocabulary word. It's on my board. This word is on my board, just like independence is. Because some of these words y'all aren't retaining. But I need you to remember these words. Okay? All right, so why would a country want political autonomy?
So they can be their own selves.
So they can be their own selves? Anybody else? So they can be free? Anyone else?
Do what they want.
They can do what they want. They have freedoms. All right, so a country without political autonomy is still subject to be controlled by the other countries' ideas, ideologies, their beliefs, their values, their laws, their rules, their rituals, anything that's dealing with whatever that other country is doing, they're still subject to it. They're subject to their control. So most countries want to be free. Are we an autonomous? Do we have an autonomous government?
No. Wait.
Do we have freedoms?
Yes.
Do you have the freedom of speech?
Yes.
Do you have your own rights?
Yes.
You got certain laws you got to abide by, but at the same time, we're not subject to the British control anymore. All right, so it's important for all self-governing countries to have autonomy in order to have their cultural heritage. Like this month is Black History Month. I'm an African American, so I celebrate it. You'll see me wear my African attire. You'll see me wear different stuff because that's my culture. Many of you have different cultures and different things that you do. Like yesterday, something that was symbolic for me was some years since my sister passed away. She passed away on 2019. So what we do, we celebrate her life. We may have lit candles. This year we didn't light candles. My mom went to the grave and put flowers there. Sometimes we release balloons, but that's, everybody have their own way of celebrating different things. In some cultures like Latin America, they have things like the Day of the Dead, where they celebrate their deceased loved ones. Those are things that people do that other countries could stop you from doing if you don't have autonomy. So you have the freedom to have your Facebook and Instagram and type what you want to at a certain extent, because some things can be, you can get booted off, if you write the wrong things. But you have certain rights to a certain extent. But in other countries, you might not have that. Remember when we talked about Cuba? When they had blackouts and the government censored what they saw on TV and on their radios? What kind of government did they have? A communist government. And that government really was controlled by the dictator. It wasn't controlled by another country. But you got to think about when they colonized different areas, when we talked about exploration and they explored the original people, the people that lived there before them, the Inuits, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the people that were the original inhabitants, the indigenous people of an area, they didn't do the things that these European people did. They sacrificed people. The Aztecs did. They were warriors. They worshiped many gods. They were polytheistic. But then when you have another country comes in and colonize your area, they say you're going to be monotheistic, which means what?
One God.
You're going to worship one God. They changed their whole belief system.
And they believed it.
And they believed it. Some of them didn't believe. Some of them, I'm not going to say all of them, but they were made to, because if they didn't do it, what would happen to them?
They
Get
did.
killed.
So a lot of them just went along with the game.
I was just that guy.
They just acted and pretended because they wanted to live. So they just went along with it. A lot of people lost their lives because, like you say, I want to went along with it. Yeah, because you feel how you feel. You got your freedoms. That's why countries want to have autonomy. They want to be free, away from other countries' control. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Their language. We already talked about their language. What language do they speak?
French.
So in Quebec embraces its French what? Inheritance. With cultural diversity. What is diversity?
Many things. Like
Differences, right. We learned that word a long time ago. I'm glad it's sticking. Different than any other city in Canada. So Quebec is unique in itself in Canada. It's different. It's set apart. It's a separatist. They want their own. And that's the main thing that you need to take away from our standard, which is our standard was SS6H1. Describe Quebec's independence movement. What was it? To be what?
independent.
To be independent from who?
Canada. I mean, the British people.
The British control. All right, so how did Quebec's independence movement, this is our essential question, affect Canada?
Wait, say that again.
How did Quebec's independence movement, it's on the board, affect Canada?
Money. Money.
What about the money?
They lost it because of Quebec.
How did they gain money?
Fur trade.
Okay, the fur trade was imported. The independence movement, it was all about the money, all about the Benjamins, baby. Money. Remember we talk about economy, they concerned about their money. That's why all this stuff was a big deal to Great Britain, because that beaver fur, the fur trade was imported to their money. So of course these people are going to inherit their own money because they're no longer under whose control? All right, they kept their own money in their own country. All right, so you should be able to explain how Quebec's independence movement affect Canada. All right, what does the word autonomy mean again?
Freedom. Like trying to get away. trying to get away from the country that's ruling you.
All right. What was another vocabulary word? Let me see. That you should be. It should be sticking in your head. What language do they speak in Quebec?
French and English.
Which one is their first language?
French.
All right. Good. All right. That's pretty much it. That's what's gonna be on your test. If you can explain what we just talked about, that's the history of Canada. Pretty much, in a nutshell. Any questions? Any comments? Yes, sir. Go ahead and go. Go ahead and go. All right, you gotta go too. Go ahead and go.
4 people.
All right, 4 at a time.